All right, we're coming into the tutorial to make a hemp bracelet. And I am Jennifer, sometimes known as Aunt B on my YouTube channel here. And this is Glory B that I share with Matthew, who is in Texas. And he was the techie one, so we decided to share our channel. And I'm so glad we did, because it really balances out what we're providing here. We started it for the People's Convoy, and I'm in the North Georgia mountains right now after a little visit with my parents. And I will be leaving soon to go back to Maryland, where I will be catching up with the People's Convoy again once they hit DC. So I'll be doing more live streaming from there. But in the meantime, I'm sharing with you some of the jewelry making that I do. And I thought I'd do some tutorials as well, which I've wanted to do for a while. So we just did one where I finished up a bracelet. I like to try to finish these anymore before starting a new one. And I just wanted to show you some of my setup. I always have a suitcase because I teach this to anyone who is bored or wants to learn something new. I'm a recovery coach, and I've worked in rehabs and crisis intervention housing, and boredom is never a good idea for any of us, much less if you're in early recovery from drugs and alcohol. It's good to stay interested and busy, and checking out new hobbies, learning new skills, finding new interests, and having small productive successes and acknowledging them every day. So when I taught these, it's an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours later, they've got their own bracelet they made themselves, men and women, and it's very important that those who have not done this before are able to be amazed with themselves that they were able to complete something so amazing and beautiful and wearable, and then it also rekindles the interest in it for those who had been doing this before. So I wanted to I'll turn this around. I'll just show you some of the things. This is, where is it? Oh, this is the one I just finished. And I just showed how to finish it off and do a slide clasp, which that's a leather shoestring. But I like mixing up all the textures. I don't want to spend too much time on this since I just did this before. But here are some other things that I've created that I had with me. I've been getting into leather cuffs, and I sell these. I just finished writing my descriptions for all of these. This one's a wrap. It goes around your wrist twice. And these will be listed online shortly for sale. So I pulled everything out. These are the beads we're going to use for this next one. And those are the macrame beading boards, which are amazing, by Beadsmith. Designed by Ann Dilker for the Beadsmith. That's the macrame boards. They are fantastic. And these are just some beads that I carry with me. And I just laid them out. Just don't make things complicated. Get yourself organized. Use what you have, like a cookie tray that Mom had underneath the counter over here in the kitchen at the cabin. So that helps me be organized, and I can move it downstairs later if I want to continue to make some more. And these are great organizers too. This is my little box for making charms. And here are some of my tools. Beading pliers, scissors, beading wire, a little tool bag. This is extra string and leather. Try not to waste much of anything at all. And this is my suitcase that I have everything in. These are a few more things that I just was going through. Some bracelets that I need to finish. That one's already finished, but I feel like I want to do something more to it. Not sure what. These are some other wrap cuffs that were already made. You bought the leather, and then I added the turquoise rivets or the brass rivets. I don't love these as much, so I'll probably just wind up wearing them myself or something. Oh, here's another finished one. I like using a lot of different textures that have that same leather sliding clasp. But it all goes in this suitcase that's on roller because it'll go with me to work when I have clients, because boredom is often an issue, and I like to come prepared. Boredom wasn't good for me. It's still not good for me, and I don't think it's good for anybody. So there's just some of the things that I made. All right, let's get this thing started. I just have these sitting on a placemat. Just use what you got. Use what you have around. Okay, I'm going to reverse this again. It's a gorgeous day, so let's get this going. I found a light that Dad had. Oh. Oops, sorry about that. I almost canceled it. All right. So, again, using the mini macrame board designed by Ann Dilker for the Beadsmith. I'm just getting out the hemp string. And I believe this is 20 gauge hemp string. It's not the smallest that they make, but it's not the biggest either. So what I do is I do a full arm's length, as wide as my arms will stretch. And I do not cut it, but I double it. Okay. Always keep your workspace nice and clean. Let me show you what this looks like. Maybe, let's see, let's go the other way. Okay, so I just simply, I took my arms as wide as they will go, and even back some, which I'm not really able to show you, and doubled it. So I'm curious how many feet that is. Let me just measure it. I'm just getting a tape measure. I'm just curious how long it is so that I can give you an accurate amount. Remember, having a little too much is good. Having way too much is cumbersome, but not having enough, don't worry, there are tricks where you can add to it. So, but I start off usually with plenty for everyone, and that is about 6 feet of hemp times 2, 12 feet total, because it's just simply doubled over. Okay, so 12 feet total, doubled over. Then I'm just taking it here, and I want about 1.5 feet. Okay. That'll give us plenty to knot with and finish with. So I just kept it all intact. So I've got these longer parts to it. I just simply turned it over about 1.5 feet of it. Now I'm just going to take about 4 inches. And this is the easiest way for newcomers, I believe, is go ahead and make a knot, leaving yourself a little bit better than 4 inches, remembering that your knot equates to almost 1 inch itself of string. Okay? So I haven't even cut it. Got about 4 inches. And I just tied all of that together in one knot. And that leaves that and that. All right? So let's move this. And I'm just going to anchor. See how it looped? That 4 inches. Putting the knot right at the top here at number 3. Now you can use tape. You don't have to go out and spend money on a board. You can tape this right to the counter, right above the knot. Now, the shorter strings, I'm going to go ahead and pull those taut. I'm going to go ahead and pull that taut and cut that end, creating two shorter strings, okay? Now, the way that this lays, separate out the 2 longest ones to the outside and the 2 shorter ones, making sure that they are not twisted. Just lay them flat and anchor them at the bottom. Okay, so that is anchored to this board. Now, if I did not have the board, I could use a strong tape at the top and a strong tape at the bottom and work with it that way, which I did for a long time. I used a small cheese board even for quite a while until I found these. And these have just been amazing. So now we're ready to begin tying our knots. What we're going to do is just a basic square knot. And it starts with the first half of the square knot, then you do the second half of the square knot, creating the full square knot. That sounds a little bit harder than it is. My suggestion always is be very dramatic and go ahead and put those 2 big strings way, way out to either side, like straight across in a T or across, so that you can allow yourself sorry, I'm going to be adjusting this. Okay, so these are like going straight out. These are the longest ones. These are called the knotting strings, the longer ones. The 2 shorter ones that are anchored to the board are called the anchor strings. We're making these knots around this anchor string. Okay, so I'm going to start with the left knot, and I'm going to create a number 4 by taking this string, grabbing it to create kind of a loop, and laying it over the center anchor strings. Just simply laid it over, and it creates kind of a number 4. All right, I'm taking the right knotting string and bringing it over the tail of the number 4. I want to go underneath these 3 strings and up through that loop. Okay, so this right hand knotting string is going over that tail of the number 4, and then I can just grab the end to make it easier for you to see. I'm going underneath the 2 anchor strings and the number 4 string and up through this number 4 loop. Okay. Now what I've created, once I straighten it out for you, is a pretzel. I'm going to come in pretty close on this for you. Okay, do you see the pretzel that is grabbing? Oh, fight me. Oh, there's my braid. Okay. Oh. Well, I'm trying. The gimbal. So we have the pretzel, the twisted, 1 string's going through down through this loop, 1 string's going up through this loop. And I'm just going to draw those strings together, tightening that knot around the anchor strings, and pulling it up to the top of my knot. Okay, now taking the right hand knotting string and creating a loop, just laying it over the 2 anchor strings, creating a number 9. Okay, so again, I just took the right hand string, the right hand knotting string, and made a loop, laying it over the 2 anchor strings. I'm taking the left hand knotting string and bringing it over the tail, and I'm going to go underneath the 2 anchor strings and the tail of the 9. Okay, so I laid it over the tail of the 9. Now I want to go underneath this, what has created this X. Underneath the 2 anchor strings, the tail of the 9, and up through this loop. Okay, grabbing my 2 ends. I've created another pretzel, only I came at it from the other side. So they're grabbing these 2 anchor strings. I've got 1 string that's going underneath and 1 that's going on top of it, creating a pretzel. 1 string's going down through this loop, 1 string's going up through this loop, and then I just simply pull it up to the last one and give it a little tug. I don't want to tug it so hard that I'm pulling the knot in on itself, but I don't want it loose where I'm creating gaps. I have just created 1 full square knot. That's my original knot. That's my square knot. You'll be able to see them better once I get a couple more on here. So again, being overly dramatic, having my strings way out there, bringing the left one, laying that string over the 2 anchor strings, creating a number 4. Bring the right knotting string over the tail of the left. See this X that this naturally creates? I just simply want to go underneath the 2 knotting strings and up through this loop. So I'm over that tail, and then I'm just taking the end of it. I'm going underneath the 2 anchor strings and the tail of the 4 and up through that loop of the 4. So I've created another pretzel. Got 1 string on top of the anchor strings and 1 underneath it. 1 goes up through, 1 goes down through. And I'm just tightening it up to the last knot that I did. Now I'm going to go from the right and create a number 9 by simply bringing the right knotting string over the 2 anchor strings, bringing the left knotting string over the tail of the 9, and then underneath these 3 at the X point. Just grab the end of it, go underneath the 2 anchor strings and the tail of the 9. I've created that pretzel, and I pull that up to that last string. I've just created another full knot, another full square knot. So I have 1, 2. So I have 2 full square knots now. I'd like to do more, but now I think I'll go ahead and add beads. Okay, so at this point I will have 3 once I'm almost finished, because once I'm finishing it, because I will have a finishing knot using those square knots. So I want to show you how to do that later when we're finishing it, but for right now I'm going to add my beads to the 2 anchor strings. So I unanchor the 2 anchor strings, and I wonder what I did with my bead wire. Those things are so easy to lose. It is phenomenal. So I'm going to take my 0.15 inch bead string by Bead-A-Lon, and you can use any bead wire you want. That's just what I have here. They seem to make good wire. I'm not advertising for them, but if they would like me to, I certainly would. And I'm going to get about a 7-inch piece of this wire and cut it and use this to bead my beads. I just simply double it over, matching up the ends. Grab my first, I had already picked out, let me show you this at least. I had already picked out the beads before I started the video. I showed you the beads all on the cookie sheet there. I kind of laid them out, but I picked them out. These bead boards, you can get these at a Dollar Tree or at a crafting store, and I'm not advertising for them personally, but that's where I got these. And I just simply lay them out in the design that I want to use. And I try not to knock them to kingdom come. Okay? So what I'm starting with is this bead here, and I'm going to string all of these on here. I can never find any ring pins that I like. I'll have to call her back. All right. So I just strung them onto the wire, You can just do them one at a time. That's probably easier if you're just beginning. I make sure that my anchor strings are not twisted, because if they're twisted up in between the beads, they tend to twist the string and the string rolls. Okay, I'm going to back up just a little. All right, so I put the string through that loop, push the beads down to the string. I'm grabbing the wire from pretty close to where the beads are, and I'm pulling them through, which just simply threaded them onto the anchor strings. Making sure that the anchor strings are not twisting, I slide them up and go to string on the next beads. There's a check glass one that looks like turquoise, and another one. And I'll go ahead and do one of these orange ceramic. Making sure that my anchor beads, my anchor strings are not twisted. I put the ends through this loop. Of the wire. Pull those beads down to the string. Grab those. Get my pliers. Grab both wires at the base of that bead, and voila. Making sure these aren't twisted. I just push those up and add more. Angel said, thanks, Shug. I wish her a happy Mother's Day yesterday. Okay. 2 more of the glass check beads that look like turquoise. I'm just threading them on both wire ends, acting like the wire ends are one. I'm just getting the beads onto the wire. That leaves me with that loop. And I put the ends of the anchor strings, both of them, through that loop. Thread them through. Pull that wire taut. Grabbing both wires with the pliers, I thread the beads onto the anchor strings, making sure that my anchor strings are not twisting. I just add them up there. And I continue this until I have all of these beads on the anchor strings. Now you can do however many knots you want to after each bead and then add another bead, but I just think that this is easier just to get all your beads onto the anchor strings. Again, I'm just threading the ends of my anchor strings through that wire loop, pushing those beads to the string, grabbing my pliers, grabbing both the wires close to the bead, and pull. And that threads them on, making sure that the strings are not twisting underneath the beads, because that will twist your bracelet. Pliers really help you pull through the smaller beads pretty effortlessly. Oh, I see. Because I wanted those closer together. I only needed one there. Okay. I thought I was short a bead and I was not. All right, let's try this again. First, the big bead. I think those are bone. And then another one of the glass check beads. Wire it onto the string. That's the way I want it. Oh, good. So you can see the design is starting to shape up. The only difference is that we're going to be making some knots around them, around the beads. That'll be the center. Only there'll be knots around it. I would do one bead at a time when you're just starting to use this technique, so you don't overwhelm yourself. I've been doing this a little while. Okay, so all of my beads that I'm going to be using are on the 2 anchor strings now. Making sure they're not twisted, I'm going to go ahead and anchor those down, which is why they're called anchor string. Now, the anchor string is what we're tying knots around. So I don't lose this. I'm putting it back on my beading board, which I thought I did with the other one. Now I don't know what to do with it. Okay, I'll just move that out of the way. And again, super animated. I'm going to push these down some because now I'm anchored, so they're not going to come off. I've got one little teeny check bead right there, and I'm going to, no different than before, just because there's a bead there doesn't mean I'm doing my square knot any differently than I did it before. I'm just doing it around a bead. So taking the left knotting string, making a number 4 by laying the tail of it over the 2 anchor strings. Excuse me. Taking the right hand knotting cord, laying it over the tail of the number 4 and bringing it up underneath this X. See how that creates a little X there? Just going to bring this up underneath that X and up through this loop of the 4. And that created my pretzel, which I'm just tightening up to that bead. Snug, snug. And that's half of my square knot. Starting from the right, I bring my knotting cord and lay it over the 2 anchor strings, creating my number 9. Bring the left hand knotting string over the tail of the number 9. It's just draped over it, and up and underneath here and up through the right. Okay, underneath the X intersection, up through the 9 loop, creating my pretzel and snugging it up to the last knot. That's 1 full square knot. With a check bead in between that square knot and that square knot. That's 1 full square knot. I want to have some extra weight on this side, so I'm going to go ahead and add that bead. Now the hole might be big enough to get those 2 strings through it, but I'm not going to wrestle with it because I'm probably going to wrestle with these and get the strings in between it. So I'm just going to make this around it just like I did that one. I'm going to make a number 4 by just bringing that knotting string over the 2 anchor strings, bring the right knotting string over the tail of the number 4, and then underneath that X intersection and up through that loop of the number 4. Created my pretzel. No different than before, only it just happens to be around a bead. No big deal. Tighten it down and bring it up to. That looks cool with it around the bead anyway. I like that. So that's half of a square knot. So I bring the right knotting string and lay it over the anchor strings, creating a number 9. Bring the left knotting string over the tail of the number 9 and underneath all 3 here at this X intersection and up through the 9 loop. So I'm going underneath and up through, creating my pretzel, which has clasped around. I've got 1 string over and 1 string under the knotting strings. 1 string is going over and under and through this loop. 1's going under and up through this loop. That's creating the pretzel. And snug it up to the other knot, and that's 1 full square knot. Underneath and up and through. There's another full square knot. And I'm at 1 inch, so let's see. Oh, here's another thing that Grandma's nut picker is really good for. I had wanted to add a check bead there, so no big deal. I'm just going to undo this last square knot. Okay, I undid that last square knot because I had wanted to add another check bead there to keep it even. So I'm going to make a square knot around it. Create the number 4. Now this is something that I do, is I just go ahead and keep it lifted. You'll find your own way of doing these things a little faster. And I just did a whole full square knot underneath that other check bead. I'm going to do another. You will figure out your way of doing your square knots faster and getting your tensions even. So I'm thinking just 2 there just to divide it. Now I'm going to slide that next check bead down and again make another square knot, same as before. First making a knot from the left, then making one from the right. Always making sure that my center anchor beads are not twisting. Now, here's the ceramic orange bead, the painted ceramic orange bead, okay? I am going to try to get both of my knotting strings through the center of this bead. So I'm taking my wire threader that I've created, matching up both ends, and I'm going to slide it down through the center of this orange ceramic bead. So I basically just threaded that wire through there, leaving the loop on this end. I'm going to take my knotting strings and from underneath the loop up through, not pulling it all the way through, I just need a little tail. I'm just threading them up and through the loop of the wire. Okay. Tightening it down. Oh, good, this is super easy. Taking my pliers, grabbing both the wires, not the string, but the wires, and grabbing my bead and pulling those strings right through. Making sure that they don't get twisted. I want my right one to stay on the right, and my left one to stay on the left, my left knotting strings. I can pull that bead right up to that last knot. So now, instead of going around the bead like I did on this one, I went through the bead, allowing for the full viewing of that bead without the string being around it. Looks cool this way, looks cool this way. Personal preference. So, again, starting from the left, I'm going to make another square knot. Bring the right over the tail, and then up through that X intersection, up through that loop of the 4, creating my pretzel, tightening it down to that bead. Every now and again, you might need to just tighten down your anchor strings. No big deal. Now from the right, laying that over the anchor strings, bringing the left over the tail of the number 9, and up and underneath that intersection, up through this loop. creating the pretzel, tightening it down, and one full square knot. All I did was bring the 2 knotting strings through that bead to create just another square knot on this side. Now I'm going to bring up another of the ceramic beads and make a square knot around it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add one more square knot. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and make a square knot around that check bead. Around this wooden round bead. Another check bead. And I'm going to go through this bead if I can. So I'm going to do this the same way I did the orange bead. Grabbing my wire. Match up the 2 ends of the wire and go down through the bead from the top to the bottom. I just threaded it through that bead, that's all, leaving this loop on the end. Then I take the 2 ends of my knotting strings and thread them up and through. Not pulling them all the way. I don't have to have that much of a tail on this end. Grab the wire from the other side of the bead, grab the bead, and pull those 2 strings through. Keeping the right knotting string to the right side and the left knotting string to the left side within that bead so that I'm not twisting my bracelet. Okay. Now I'm going to make another square knot, starting from the left. If you start from the right, always start from the right. If you start from the left, always start from the left. I started from the left, so I'm starting this square knot from the left. One full square knot before this bead and after this bead. Bring up the check bead, make another square knot around that. Being careful not to twist my anchor beads, my anchor strings. Try to find a good angle. Push up the wooden bead. Start starting from the left. And from the right. And I'm just using square knots on this one. There are lots of other macrame knots that you can use, but I'm just using the simple square knot on these, which is beautiful. I push up that check bead. I made another square knot after that. And I want one more here. I really like the way this is turning out. I'm making sure that I'm matching what I did on each side of the center bead. This is my center bead. So because I did 2 square knots here, I'm going to do 2 square knots here as well. It's all even. Now remember, I went through this orange bead, so I'm going to go through it again. See if I can get a better shot of what I'm doing here. Taking my wire, matching at the ends of it, threading the wire, the two ends of the wire down through this ceramic orange bead, leaving the loop exposed, taking the 2 ends of my knotting wires, my knotting string, excuse me, and threading them through that loop, up and through that loop. Tighten it down, oops, to the bead. Not grabbing the anchor string, but grabbing the wire from the other side of that bead, and then grabbing the bead, pull those strings through. That finishes my need for the wire. And pull them through, keeping the right knotting string to the right, and the left knotting string to the left. That way it's not twisted in between inside of that bead, which would then twist the bracelet. Okay. So again, I'm going to make another square knot. Push up another check bead, made a square knot around that. And we did 2. So I'm doing 2 on this side. Push up my check bead. Make a regular square knot right around that bead. No different than if that bead wasn't there. set that last check bead there, making my square knot around it. One more square knot, like to match the other side. And I have all of the beads on and all of my knots there. Okay. Now, awesome. Yeah, this bracelet or anklet, I guess. Thank you so much. I figured I'd still be doing this by the time I got back. So now I'm going to plug in the phone. Because I would hate for it to cut out before we're done here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and show you how we finished, okay? So I've still got my 2 knotting strings and my anchor strings. I'm going to unanchor. Okay, well, actually, I'll keep them anchored. Sorry, I had to think about it. Okay, so I'm going to make a square knot, only I'm going to keep it loose. I'm not going to tighten it down. There's 1/2 of my square knot. And there's the other half of my square knot, creating what looks a lot like a figure 8. Top of the 8, bottom of the 8. Okay, see this string right here that goes over the anchor strings? I am going to thread the ends of my knotting strings down through that one string. That center of the 8 that's going over the 2 anchor strings. I just simply brought them down and through that center top string of the center of the 8. So I want to tighten the outsides of my 8. Leaving these 2 strings alone, I'm taking the sides of the bottom loop of the 8 and pulling that center string up to the last one. Okay. Now I'm going to tighten this down. I'm going to pull these 2 loops out, put my finger on the center of it, and get stuck like I always do. What did I do? Oh. Now, there's just some things that I have blocks on, and that just happens to be one of mine. I don't know why. I make it difficult every single time, and sometimes it's easier than others, and I don't know why, because it's not difficult. So, there's one end. Okay, I'm going to do the other end. I'm just simply moving that up to give myself more working room for this side. Now remember, we had made that one loop here because that's just easy to start doing your square knots up to. It's not necessary, but it's easy in the beginning. I'm going to undo that knot with Grandma's nut picker and my fingernails, whichever is easier. Just undoing that very first knot of all 4 of the strings together. Okay, all done. Now I'm going to take my scissors, pull that taut, and cut, creating 4 strings on this side. Okay, you can see which ones are the outside knotting strings and which ones are the anchor strings. Just simply anchor down the 2 center ones. Starting from the right, because I'm upside down. Remember, I turned this thing around. I'm going to make a very loose square knot. That creates that number 8, that top wire there, that top string that goes to the center of the 8, I'm going to take these 2 ends and bring them down through that top string in the center of the 8. Attempting to keep the left to the left and the right to the right. Not as easy from this end because I don't have quite as much string to work with. Okay, now I'm going to just tighten that down. That just takes practice, tightening down each part of it. See, I did better on it that time. So that left me with these 4 tails, right? Same as the last tutorial video. I want to string some beads onto the end. And I decided to go with wooden beads and the ceramic beads. This wooden bead is a little bit messed up. I don't know if you can tell. It's got some of the wood sticking out of the center. So I create these little jewelry, I don't know what you call it. It's like a little saw. I do know what it's called. It's just not coming to me. So I'm just going to trim that down a little bit. Because I don't want to waste the bead. There's nothing wrong with it, except it needs a little trim. I'm just sawing away a little rough edge. Filing it. There we go. Okay, now it's nice and smooth. So I'm taking 1 wooden bead and 1 check bead. And I want the wooden bead to be on there first. And then the check bead to be on the end. So I thread it onto my wire like that, leaving that loop to put one of these strings through. I just simply thread it, push the beads to the string, grab both ends of the wire, pull it through, and push it up to the end. Now I'm going to do that 3 more times for this end. One more string through that wire, push the beads to the string, grab both wires, grab the beads, and pull the string through. It's just like one of those needle threaders, only stronger for beading. Same concept. And grab my string. Okay. First the wooden one, then the check one. Grab one of the strings, thread it through the loop, push the beads to the string. Sometimes you don't need the pliers. Make sure that these aren't going to fall off. One more. Okay, I've got all the beads on there, so now I'm going to just do a double knot for each one, leaving about a 2-inch long string. Maybe a little longer. No big deal. Person can always shorten these strings if they want to, once they figure out how much they need to get the bracelet on and off, or the anklet on and off, or whether they want it to be a bracelet or an anklet. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a double knot by making 1, 2 loops, and then I go around that string again and up and through those loops. I like the way it looks when I do them nice and clean, which I don't always do. That one's a little short. Got that one, that one. Okay, I got this one. And it's not a big deal if they're not that clean. 1, 2, around, up and through. Don't be frustrated if that did not give you enough tutorial on that knot. Just look up double knot. Push all your beads down to the end, and that side is finished. Unanchor that end, bring this down to anchor it, turn it around, use that for something else. Oh boy, we're getting close to being finished here. How long? 1 hour, 11 minutes. Yeah, that's about right. For teaching, it can be about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how many people I have. So I'm just stringing the decorative beads on this end. Wooden one first, then the check bead. Not sure what happened here. There's a little bird's nest out on the screen porch where the mom and dad birds have been feeding the little chickies. You can hear the little chickies peep, 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 peep. It's really cute. They almost look like sparrows. I'm not sure what they are. Ooh. And sometimes you get a wooden bead that the hole didn't get drilled all the way through it. So again, you just take a little file and just simply file that out a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and get this one too, just in case. One first, then the check bead. Thread it onto this, thread the hemp string through the loop and thread your beads on. All right, one more. But it's interesting because a lot of people don't want to spend a whole lot of money on hemp bracelet because you can buy it pretty cheap from, you know, the beach shops and things like that. They're getting a lot of them from South America that have been mass produced. However, they're being mass produced by human beings who are a lot faster than I am, and they just aren't selling for much. They've driven the price down. And each one of those, even though they can sell for very cheaply sometimes, there's a lot of work put into each one of them, a lot of skill and a lot of work. And we don't realize it sometimes. Going for approximately 2 inches, maybe a little bit more. So it could be worn as an anklet too, if somebody wanted to. So that's where I'm putting that knot, is at approximately 2 inches or so. Just using the board to measure it. That one went pretty long. always add in another knot if it's too long. No big deal. Okay, all my decorative end beads are on. Back it up just a little bit. So I'm just going to do another sliding clasp. So I'm just going to bring this over. Actually, I think I'd like to use black. So I'm going to make a loop, pinch all of these together, loop it around, heading towards the looped end. Try not to cross it over on the other side. I'm going to go for about 7 wraps, I think. This is a black cotton string, which I do like working with the cotton as well. This is a slide clasp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go one more. 7, and then up through that loop. Pulling from both ends. Bringing that knot underneath those 7 wraps. Let's bring this in some. That looks really great. Snug it down, making sure that I can slide. Yep. I'm going to trim that pretty flush because it's probably not going anywhere. Making sure that I'm not cutting any of my other strings. I've got a slide clasp. Now I'm going to trim these. Leaving approximately a centimeter. Don't go too quick and cut from the wrong side. These are reusable. And 1 inch is not really. That's reusable as well. They go in my bag. Little pieces can add texture. Okay, and we have just completed a bracelet. That is my hemp bracelet tutorial. The way that you get it on and off is you slide it open, put it on. If you're going to keep it, you can use your teeth to grab one side. My fingers are long enough that I don't have to do that, especially since I will be selling this. And there you go. Very cool boho hemp bracelet. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And this is Glory B, praying that you have a wonderful day and enjoy crafting and creating beautiful jewelry to keep or to share or to sell. Hope to see you again. And remember, glory be to God.